Testing 1 2 1 2 1 2. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming down to the Copy Systems Legend Suite this evening. It's fantastic to see so many familiar faces from home games, away games, obviously down here for the second Fans Forum of the season. My name's Callum Cooper. If you don't know who I am, I'm normally the one that's talking a load of rubbish on the iFollow commentary. I'll be your host for tonight. I'll just go through a quick plan of the evening and how it's set out, how we're expecting it all to go. So we'll start with sort of open to the floor questions for you guys to get involved. That will go on for around about 50 minutes. We'll have a 5 minutes break for drinks, toilet breaks, all that sort of stuff. And the second half, again, open to the floor questions, and hopefully we get through as much as we physically can, and sort of answer all the questions that you wanted to get through. And that'll go for about 45 minutes, the second half. Yeah, so just obviously a reminder of etiquette. We want to get through as much as we can. We want every question answered. So in terms of people answering questions or asking questions, if we can have silence while people are doing that, just to obviously get through it, and the same for these guys behind me answering those questions as well, and just to be respectful and be quiet, because it's all about, we want it to be open and honest, and we do that by getting through as many questions as physically possible. And please listen to every single question as well, because what also comes with that is we don't want the repetition of several questions, and we want to get through as many as possible and answer all your guys' questions. So how it'll work, if you guys can raise your hand when we go to open to the floor. If you guys raise your hand, we'll have a microphone out and about, and one of our guys will come over and just hold the microphone in front of you, and then you can ask the question to whoever it sees fit. All right, so just before I introduce you to our three guests behind me, I just want to pass over to Khaled, who's going to come down and just say a few words before we get started and open the evening.
For one last final time, I'm not going to take too much of your time. I asked the board to get the opportunity to come and say thank you for your support and my goodbyes. It's been bittersweet of a decision. I want to thank the board and specifically our chairman for the collaboration over the last couple of weeks, every colleague, but mostly all of you throughout all the ups and downs. I was telling my staff earlier today that my daughters didn't speak English when they came. And in the mornings, my 4-year-old jumps up and she wakes me up by saying, "Hey up." They asked me to go to Tarn. So I just wanted to say thank you. And, you will have a fan for life. And I really, really hope Barnsley FC continues the journey and achieves everything that all of you want and that the owners also want. So I just thought it was, appropriate for one last time to say, thank you for everything over the last 2.5 seasons, and best of luck to everybody. All right? So thank you, guys.
I will just quickly say as well, we are live on YouTube. It is being streamed on YouTube. So for anybody that is watching that stream and you think your question might not have been answered, you are able to enter a comment, and we will try our possible best to get that answered in the second half. So get those in during the first half, and we'll get those answered during that second sort of 45 minutes. So without further ado, thank you to Khaled, and I'll introduce you then to our guest. So please, first of all, give a round of applause to the Barnsley FC chairman and co-owner, Neerav Parekh. Also, alongside me, we've got another director and co-owner, Julian Quay. And, of course, the Barnsley FC head coach, Neill Collins. So without further ado, now the introductions are over, let's get started. So, as I said, please raise your hands and we'll work our way over with the microphone and be able to answer the questions. But let's open it to the floor. Thank you, guys.
When the director is away, who's in charge of the day-to-day running of the football club?
For the last few years, it's been Khaled. The CEO is in charge of the day-to-day running of the football club. And then going forward, obviously, there'll be a split where the CEO will be responsible for the organizational side of things and the sporting director will be responsible for everything on the football side.
Well, in the last few years, we've gone from disaster to disaster. What's gone wrong?
There's also been some high points in the last few years. I think the playoff semi-final, almost getting to the Premier League, high point. I think the Struber season was a pretty high point. I know we avoided relegation, but I've never felt that good when that last goal went in that day. There's obviously been last season where we got to Wembley. There's been some high points as well, but like with every football club, there's high points and low points.
Do you want to be, how about some specific disasters? Let's get specific.
Shutting of the West End, nothing was done to it before they reopened it. The signing of the contract to go with Fanatics.
Okay, so West End, Fanatics, and we'll take those all one by one.
The big one, last week when we went in the FA Cup.
Okay.
Now, somebody at this football club should have known he was eligible to play. I know. Other fans know. So why did somebody at this club know?
Let's start with. Do you want to start with West End or Fanatics?
Yeah.
How about I'll do Fanatics. So yes, the first couple of months of Fanatics have been tough on the customer service side, and obviously we and Fanatics are not happy with how it's gone. It is a beginning of a multi-year deal that we believe will be more beneficial, I can see all your faces, more beneficial for the club. And sometimes, when you start a new relationship, it starts on rocky ground. So we have been in touch with Fanatics on a daily basis, and we're working with them to improve. And when you change things, like changing to a system that is highly digitized on their side, with also a different customer service set up in the store, there are challenges. So obviously we are apologizing and sorry for the difficulties that there are, and we're working on improving those and making a better experience for you in the store.
Did you want to add on to that? Sorry.
I'll just add on, because you mentioned the FA Cup, and look, we hold our hands up for that. It should never happen. It should never happen at a non-league club, much less Barnsley. And the checks and balances just weren't good enough. We've put in new processes, and this should never happen again. but there's nothing we can do but apologise for that. I mean, it hits us as well. It hits the fans. It hits the players. No one's happy about this. It doesn't shine a good light in the club. But hopefully this was a one-off and this won't be repeated.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. We're on the same side with that one, yeah.
Well, it nearly happened a few years ago. We're under Marsh. Fans had to tell him that he wasn't available to play.
No, yeah.
Have we got another question, guys? Yep.
As you mentioned, we're splitting the role of CEO between sporting director and director of football. I just wondered if you could give me a bit more information about, that director of football role. What's his remit? Do they set strategy, etc.? I just wondered what you could kind of tell us about how that role is going to change, and is it going to be constrained by, I guess, the strategy of the board? I guess is a question that was being asked as well.
Yeah. So effectively, it's what was in the job advert. So it's largely around he'll be in charge of everything on the football side and work with Neill on the first team side. So it'll be everything related to players in, players out, and contract renegotiations for existing players. It'll also be working with the various teams on the sporting side. So working with Neill in the first team, working with physio, working with sports science, working with everyone related to the football side of the club. Also working with the academy and trying to bring players in from the academy through, making sure there's a consistent system at first team level, at academy level. So it's effectively everything football related, but no longer everything organizational related. So nothing related to commercials or revenue, any of that. That's why we're splitting it, because we think it's too much of a role for one person, and we also think it requires two very different skill sets. So like most clubs around the country, I think it's best served by having two people in the role.
Hi Neerav, just to elaborate on that a little bit more. So when you talk about the new director of football role, with that vacancy going on the board, are we starting from an absolute zero, or have we got somebody or a particular sort of person in mind?
So I think, well, we're not starting from an absolute zero. Right now, Bobby Hassel will take over. He's the interim director of football. Obviously, I think all of you all know Bobby better than I do in some respect. He needs no introduction here. So it's not starting from zero in that respect. In terms of the permanent position, we've had over 100 applications for the role already. Some extremely high-quality applications. Quite frankly, we've been blown away by some of the people who've applied. We're hoping to have this role, well, at least a name in the next month. And if the person's in a job right now, depending on the notice period, it might take a couple of months for that person to come in. But it's not starting from zero. In fact, the process has already started. But over the next few months, the transition will be seamless, because Bobby has been involved in obviously all the academy stuff, but obviously had a close relationship with Khalid, with Neill, with first team. So it should be fairly seamless over the next few months.
Evening. Just going back to that Horsham, fiasco, shall I say. First of all, drawing at Horsham, me and Maddie, my daughter, we come to every game that I can get to, and I don't know what anybody else thought, but it was embarrassing. And I actually thought, because it went to a replay, first of all, I expected clubs saying free travel for supporters to replay. I think players could have contributed to that. I honestly do, because it was absolutely embarrassing. I'm sorry. I'm being virtually brought up at Oakwell. I'm being brought to Oakwell, well, before I could walk, to be honest, and it was terrible. It's no disrespect to Neill Collins, because on me, I have a YouTube channel, not a very big one, and I've stood up for Neill Collins. And also certain players who's coming for criticism. But that game against Horsham at home, I thought was terrible, and we should have put free travel on. And the replay that eventually happened, which turned out to be pointless, and the fans that went down, are we going to refund them travel and also tickets? Because I know some people who's took days off work, and it's cost them a lot of money for what were just a glorified friendly. Basically, it meant nothing in the end. So are we going to refund them as well? Thank you.
Neil, do you want to talk about performance of the game, and I can talk about this?
I'll address the performance first of all. It was a really disappointing night. I think first of all we gave the tournament the respect by picking a very strong side. and we certainly weren't happy with a lot of aspects of that night. What I would say is, unfortunately, as a player, I've been both sides. I've been part of smaller clubs that have given the upsets, and I've also been part of the bigger club that's been part of it. I think you look through the FA Cup every round over all the years, there's a reason it's so special. It throws up nights like we had here, not one that you want to be part of. I think there was some individual mistakes that got badly punished. I think their goalkeeper was phenomenal, and because there's so many tiers between the two clubs, I can understand why they use the words embarrassing. But again, it's what makes that competition great. The players responded and put it right, as you'd expected them to do in the first game, but put it right in the second game. And it's a tough lesson that a lot of young players that we have in our squad have probably not had before. When you look at young lads like Owen Dodson that's here on loan, we've got, I think, the third or fourth youngest squad in the league. Unfortunately, it's a harsh part of being a professional that you have to go through that. And I'm sorry that the game that you managed to get to that night wasn't the performance you want. And we'll try everything we can to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I think just to echo what Neill said, just because there's a difference between the tiers, Barnsley don't have a divine right to win, and there are giant killings in the cup. Even in that round, I think there's a lot of clubs who are in higher divisions who lost to clubs in lower divisions. That being said, we want to win every single game we try and play, so I understand where you're coming from. In terms of the refunds for the fans who travel down, it's something we'll look into. We have a board meeting tomorrow and we'll discuss that. I don't want to promise anything, but we will discuss it absolutely.
Hi, evening. I came to the last fans forum, and one of the things that was asked was, were you going to get rid of Kitchen and whoever else? And you said no, and they went. I've also seen an interview with Jean where she states that she wants the club to come back to being a Barnsley club and more about Barnsley, but we seem to be going more American, so that's a little bit confusing as well, where the direction of that's going compared to what the status of the club is. But the main thing I want to know is why we're playing so defensive at home, and Kellip seems to touch the ball more than Cole or Connell or anybody else. And it's a running joke now in the East Stand that once Cotter gets it or Cadden gets it, Kellip's the next one that's going to touch the ball. And it's just a little bit confusing for the fans.
Sure, there's three questions. I'll answer the first two if that works. And then Neill, if you want to touch on the third one. Julian, if you want to jump in as well, please. The first was directed towards me because you're right, I'd say Kitching wouldn't be sold that window. I should have probably prefaced that unless it's an absolutely silly offer, which I think, quite frankly, I couldn't have predicted. When I sat there in that moment, I was 100% sure it wasn't, because we turned down multiple offers already at that point. We continued turning down multiple offers until the absolute last day. At that point, not only was the offer something that I think the club couldn't turn down, just for context, it's the second highest fee ever paid for a defender from League One. So it was something the club just could not turn down, but also Liam Kitching at that point wanted to go. I got texts from people saying the club were being greedy, we were killing a player's career, etc., etc. It's not as complicated. It's not as easy as just saying, oh, you're going to keep the player, and that's the decision we've made. That being said, going forward again, I'm never going to say a player will never be sold, but if a player is sold, it has to be for value that makes sense for the club. It also has to make sense in a sporting side, and we will reinvest that money in other players. It's just the nature of the beast that eventually players get sold. It's the football pyramid, that's how it happens. Well, if you look at recruitment over the summer, you look at last summer. Anyway, can I answer his question, though? We'll come to you next, I'm sure. The second thing in terms of the club being more Barnsley, I think it's a local community club. If you look at even the composition of the board, there's 6 people on the board. 3 of them are Barnsley people, James, Jean, and Rob Zook. In terms of it going more American, I'm not quite sure what you mean, but it will always be a local community club. Just because some of the owners don't live here, aren't from here, doesn't mean it's not a Barnsley club. I mean, the fact that all of us owners, Julian and I, we live 5,000 miles away. We come to Barnsley once a month. We want to spend time here. We want to spend time working on the club. We want to spend time attending games. We're both fans as well as owners right now. So we can't change where we were born, but we can change how much time we spend here, and we can change how much time we devote to the club.
Can I just ask a question, though? because I really want to get to the bottom of a lot of these comments. When you say the club's becoming more American, I'm not American, but what do you mean by more American?
The shirts, for a start, going back to the Stars. I mean, last time I saw the Stars, I think it was in '80s, and they lasted a season and then they went away. I don't know the sales for the shirts, but...
So those shirts are a reissue of a historic Barnsley shirt.
I don't think anybody relates to it, really. It were a one-season Star shirt and then it disappeared.
All right, so you
and the
think
shorts
all right,
changing colour.
Okay, fine. So you think that the stars are on the shirt for the Stars and Stripes of the United States?
No, what is it, an eagle?
The eagle is the logo of US Mobile, who is the front of shirt sponsor that we don't control, unfortunately. That's their logo, which is a great logo, and they love it. And according to, sponsor agreements, when you do a partnership, you present their logo. So I just want when, we get a lot of these comments, and I want to get to the bottom of them. So we're not by any means trying to be American or Captain America or any of that stuff. Just to clarify that.
Hi. Trying to address what you mentioned about our home performances. I think, first of all, my intention's always to try and win. I want to try and give you a brand of football that you don't find defensive. I want you to see exciting football. I think we have had games where we've shown that. I think the first game being 7-0 was maybe we set the bar very high. I think we beat Shrewsbury here 3-0. We've obviously had some very good wins on the road. I'm sure you'll understand as well the club's went through an awful lot of change since the end of last season. We lost some real important players, and we've also had some really important players out injured or ill. Luca Connell, I think, his influence in the team's been remarkable since he's came back in respect to the intensity that it brings, and I can see that you guys feed off of that. And I've had to try and get the right balance between winning games and also trying to play a style of football that I think is going to excite you guys at the same time. So when you lose £10 million worth of a back three, and then you don't have Luca Connell, who brings a certain level of intensity against the ball, we've got to try and, as I say, find ways to pick up points. And I think we're the third top goal scorers in the league, best amount of clean sheets. So I actually agree. At times I want to see more excitement, more forward play. Sam Cosgrove was a big reason that we signed him, was the ability that when teams sat back against us, I think teams have given us a lot of respect here to be able to play over that, get the ball forward quicker at times. But Sam will be the first to admit that it's been a slow start. He had a couple of niggling injuries, and I think in the last two games you've seen when he's came on the field, he's given us another string to our bow. I'm very fortunate that while I'm a young coach, I've had 5 years of coaching experience, and I can tell you getting better can be quite messy, and at times doesn't quite look like what you want to see. But we're working ever so hard to make sure, like we spoke about the Horsham game and some of the performances that we're not so happy about, that we don't see them again. But equally, we've got to try and win games, and that's part of the balance. And I think we've done a relatively good job of staying right within touching distance, and I do feel that we'll continue to improve. So I want to give you the team that you want to see. But a good example is Wycombe came here. The ball was in play 35 minutes. Wycombe games, the ball's never in play. We can influence that as much as we possibly can. We're a team that wants the ball in play. We want to have the ball and make teams work, because I think our fitness levels are very good. But these are all the things that we've just got to take into account and try to continue to get better. So we're working hard so that hopefully in 3 months' time you're feeling better about that. John Stead's been working on that.
There's more. Have we got one at the back? Yeah, perfect.
You mentioned £10 million worth of players lost. Naveed mentioned reinvestment in players. have we got a budget set? I'm not asking for you to tell me what it is, but is there a budget set? Have we got targets? Are we ready in January to put Neill Collins' spin on that team?
Yeah. So the money is available in January if we find the right players. But in terms of £10 million of players, well, not all of us, all of that came in because Bobby Thomas was never our player. And the other two that we sold, the money comes in installments. The only reason we got the fees we did is because we allowed the clubs to have extended payment terms. So off the money, just shy of £1 million has actually come in right now. The rest will come in over the next years. So if there's money available to spend, the board will have to put in more money in January. That being said, we're not ruling it out. If we're within touching distance of top two or within the playoffs, we all want the same thing. We want a promotion push. So if we find the right players, there will be money available.
I just want to ask what the club's vision is for the rest of this season and also for the following 5 years. Thank you.
So our vision for the rest of the season is obviously, we want to get promoted, and we need to do everything we can do to make that happen. And, where are we sitting? We're sitting in 1 point. We've got 1 point more than we had at this time last season. And we are obviously up here. Look, just to be really frank, the way you feel when you lose, we feel too, right? We want, the difference maybe is that we have a little bit more of the backstory and know why something happened and didn't happen. So, to answer the question, the vision for the club is to grow, to be able to be a beacon for the Barnsley community, to get to the championship, make a run for the premiership, to be a club that is sustainable, that has multiple revenue streams from, I know someone's going to bring up the fan zone and all that kind of stuff, but those are areas that we want to develop and build. We do want to build our merchandise sales. We do want to do better than we're doing right now with Fanatics. We want to be a global club. We want everything that you want and more for Barnsley. And, the thing is that we can't do it on our own. So, you either have to be supporting the players on the field, like when you guys get all upset and chant negative things, and the players feel that too. We want them to know that you've got their back. So in terms of vision, we want to build a club that stands for something that you're proud of. And to be honest, if the stadium was falling down but we were winning, I think you'd be happier. So, that's our focus. Our focus has to be on winning.
And just to elaborate, so I said this last fans forum as well, but Julianne and I aren't flying 5,000 miles every month to come here because we want to watch League One football. Jean and James are not travelling the length and breadth of the country, going to every single home and away game just to stagnate in League One. We want to see ourselves back in the Championship. Just because we want it doesn't mean it's going to happen this season or next season, but that's where all the energy is going, and that's what we're trying to do. We also haven't put in £10 million over the last 18 months just to stay in League One. We do want to get promoted, but football in England now is a very different beast than it was 10, 20 years ago when Barnsley was sort of a stable championship club. The landscape has changed, the money has changed, and it's a lot harder right now. We need to be smart about how we spend the money. We need to get more revenue streams, but we also, like Julianne said, need all of you all on board because we can't do this alone. The team can't do it alone, and we have to get back to the championship soon.
Is that enough? Yeah.
Hi, I've got a quick question coming from YouTube Live. Are we going to be taking the EFL trophy seriously this season?
Yeah, obviously tomorrow night we go to Blackpool, and don't want to give too much away, but we'll have a very strong side out. We think we've got a side good enough to go there and win in a very difficult game. Obviously in our last Football League trophy game we got beat heavily at Bradford, but again that's part of, I think, what the club needs to be in respect to. We went to win the game, but we also have to see for the future, and we've got some really good young players coming through, that Bobby Hassel, Tom Harbin have been working exceptionally hard over the years to develop. And if we don't at the right times give them that exposure, which was a very difficult experience against Bradford, who played a very strong side, they won't be ready to play for Barnsley. And I think that was a bit of short-term pain for hopefully a long-term game for players like, Vimal Yoganathan, who I think can be a top player, but we have to expose him so that he's prepared to play, in League One or the Championship with Barnsley. So to answer the question, yes, we want to go and try and get you guys an opportunity to win a trophy and go to Wembley, and we'll do that with the best team we think possible to win tomorrow night and then to win on Saturday at Reading.
Did we have any in the third row? Did you?
Hello, right. I'm just checking you don't scream at me. More than a year ago, you said you judge you by your actions. Whilst we must acknowledge there's been achievements such as the playoff semi-final, and there's been improvements on the pitch, well, I think there has been anyway. We must acknowledge that we have had sponsorships with Hex that fell through. The reputational damage caused by the English Football League charges, and the FA Cup departure and Fanatics. I know you've explained these, but I'm just talking about them as more of a collective. So if you were in our position tonight and you were analysing a board of directors that took the same action as yourself, how would you judge their actions?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as with any board of directors, as with any other humans, we're going to make mistakes, and we have made mistakes. When I say judge us by our actions, one, about what we've tried to do, but also how we reacted to the mistakes. So I'll take a couple of things that you mentioned. Hex, for example, absolutely a mistake. It happens. The reaction to that, within 48 hours, we were all up pretty much all night trying to sort that out, trying to get the lawyers on the line, get the opinion about how we could get out of the deal. And I think within 72 hours, we'd pulled out of the deal. So judge us by our actions. Yes, we made a mistake, but we reacted and we did what was right. Similarly, the FA Cup charge. Again, there was a mistake made at the club. We took full responsibility. We went to the FA. We talked to the Horsham chairman as well, intimated him about that. We went to the FA, admitted the mistake, appealed obviously, talked to the Horsham chairman who also wanted a replay and said this is the best situation for the fans, have a replay. We want to do this. The fans will benefit. Both clubs benefit. That's the best course of action. FA disagreed. We accepted our medicine. We didn't tie it up in legal battles. We didn't keep going back for an appeal. We made a mistake, we took accountability for it and moved on. So when I say judge us by actions, obviously the good, but when we make mistakes, please see what we're doing to make up for that, how we're trying to prevent that from happening in the future.
Can I ask you guys a question? What would you do? What would you do? So what would you do with these, if in these situations had it happened? Like, I would love to hear sometimes, like, when, okay, you're doing everything wrong, I'd love to hear some suggestions about, like, Hex happened, dealt with, FA Cup happened, dealt with. Give us some other things. Let's have a real conversation.
You're a professional football club, it shouldn't happen.
Can I answer that, Julie? I think, and first of all, before I say this, I want to give you guys some credit because I know some owners of football clubs that do not but run. There's one down the road at in Hillsborough that does that. So, and I don't say that. I don't say that as any joke. I actually feel quite sorry for him. But when you know what, when you've got to bear in mind that. We had an owner before you and before there were another directors, and okay, fair enough. I would say that we didn't progress as much as what we did or what we have done on the pitch. We have, under your leadership, we have had. I think we've had a playoff finish. But the one thing that we could always trust Patrick to do is not to get involved in these incidents. I knew that when we had Patrick in charge, we'd be playing in a first rounder of FA Cup. I knew that when we had Patrick in charge, we wouldn't be doing deals with companies that offend our LGBTQ plus supporters. I also know that those fans that have ordered shirts, and you've got to bear in mind that they're ordering these shirts during a cost of living crisis. People have not got much money at the moment. And when Patrick were in charge, we didn't have these problems. So I know that you are trying your best. I'm not thinking that you're bad people, right? It's just that we didn't have to deal with this. And we have to, and our part in doing this, and by having these forums, is by putting these questions to you, because this is the only thing that we can do, if you understand.
No, well, to start off with, Patrick was an exceptional owner. I don't think there's any two ways about it. Not only was he Barnsley through and through, he did the best he could at that point, and quite frankly, I don't think we'd have a club right now if it wasn't for Patrick, James and Jean, so I think we need to give them all that credit. And then going forward, so this morning before I came up to Barnsley, I actually met the CEO of the EFL, and I was just talking to him about different clubs. If you hear what's going on in other clubs, if you see what other owners are doing, quite frankly, it's embarrassing for the Football League in general. As Barnsley fans, obviously, you only see what's going on at Barnsley because that's what you care about, and you see the mistakes we make. But in the larger context of things, the larger scheme of things in terms of how other clubs are run, hard as may be to believe for some people, Barnsley run very well. That being said, we will still strive to make less mistakes. We will obviously still strive to do things better. But at the core of it, running a football club is an incredibly hard business. There's no getting away from it, and we're learning on the job as well.
Okay, is that better? Okay, so first of all, thank you. Like as you know, you guys have a really important role in the club, which is to keep us on our toes, and you do a really good job of it, and we really do appreciate it. You know, saying like where we like what's happened and what would we have done differently. I think, you know, all of us as a new board, relatively new board, 18 months, we know now to act faster, and we will be.
Sorry, just following on from that, you asked what could we do differently, and I think one of the things with that fans found particularly frustrating with the Fanatics thing was that it felt like it just got ignored. People were complaining on social media or wherever that they weren't getting anything, they weren't getting through to Fanatics, or you know, they were getting the wrong things sent to them, but actually there wasn't anything sort of communicated to say, look, we know there's some problems, we've got these things here, we're just trying to sort them out, it's a new relationship, blah blah blah. It did feel a little bit like, it was just kind of ignored completely from the club's point of view, and I guess that would be something from a communication point of view that could maybe be better, I think.
Yeah, so, you know, John Flatman and I back there, we have had so many conversations with Fanatics because, as you know, I'm in the fashion business, and, you know, it's criminal when you order something and you don't get it. When you order something and they return your money and then you get a 20% discount on the order of your next order, but you're so pissed off that you didn't get your first order that the 20% doesn't even matter because you're never going to order it again, right? So we know that, and Fanatics know that too, and basically what happened was and I totally acknowledge the communication thing, and, you know, we will definitely be better at that. Basically, like the whole thing, you hated the shirts, we got the shirts, you hated the shirts didn't get to the factory, Fanatics got a new factory. Like, I can't even tell you all the things that could go wrong happened at exactly the same time. And I was in the store today, and there was a gentleman there wanting to buy a shirt for his son for Christmas. And, you know, I know it's upsetting to not have that black Toby tight kit there for him to buy for his son, because that's what his son wants for Christmas, and that's what, you know, traditionally so many people do for their kids. And I understand, like, the whole, you know, obviously the cost of living crisis, et cetera, and, yes, the communication needs to be better, but just know at our end, we have at a board meeting level, like, well, what are we going to do? And we talk to Fanatics, and they are 100% working to make it better. They've put specific things in place for us that other clubs don't have, hotline, shipping, etc., etc. And I'm really sorry that that this is happening, and we believe, though, in the long term it will sort out, and we do rely on you to give us that feedback, and but do it without swear words would be really good.
Honest question to you guys. Do we as fans have a voice? Do you listen to us? Do you understand what we're asking you?
If you look at any football club up and down the country, I think you struggle to find any other club who hosts fans forums this often, who wants to listen to the fans, hear their questions, answer them. We'll stay here till all the questions are answered. So if you're talking about listening to the fans, I think you'll find very few clubs who actually do what Barnsley are doing. So absolutely the fans matter. And like I said earlier, it's a community club. Without the fans, the club doesn't exist. We'd like more fans coming to Oakwell. We'd like a better atmosphere at Oakwell. And this is one of the ways we're doing it, listening to you, taking your suggestions, your questions on board, and then hopefully improving things going forward. But if you look at the actual facts, I know there's a lot of stuff floating around that you're not fans, you're customers, the board don't care about you, etc., etc. If you look at the amount of time we're putting into this, if you look at how often we're talking to the fans and engaging with the fans, I would suggest it's more than any other club in the 72, in League 2, League 1 and the Championship.
Okay, I'll ask you a question then. South Stand, Gangway 1, why can we not have safe standing in that stand?
Because we'd love to have safe standing, but at this point, Barnsley Football Club don't own the stadium, and we don't have a long lease in the stadium. Ideally, that gets sorted out at some point, and if that happens, we will look into safe standing. But at this point, it would make no sense because we have a lease that runs out in, I think, 3 or 4 years.
Okay, that's fine, but you're threatening to take people's season tickets off them for standing in Gangway 1. You want a better atmosphere. The atmosphere in this ground is coming from Gangway 1.
I totally hear you on that, and I get a lot of messages on Twitter about the attitude from the stewards toward the fans over the standing, etc., etc. We actually know it's a big issue. It's an expensive issue too. If we want to put in safe standing, it will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. But we are talking about it. We're hundreds of thousands. But we are talking about it tomorrow in our board meeting. And again, I really thank you for bringing it up because it is an issue. And the other issue that we will be talking about tomorrow too is just how it's managed by the stewards, between the stewards and the fans.
Yeah, all I've got to say is, you talk about it's hundreds of thousands of pounds. We're a decent-sized club in League 1. There's clubs a lot smaller than us, a lot lower than us, that actually got it. They've had it installed. So if they can afford it, why can't we?
So just one thing on your point around fans being ejected or season tickets being deactivated. We don't want to do that. There's no reason why we'd want less fans in Oakwell. But you have to see that the EFL, the SGSA, they have power over even stands being open. If there's too many fans standing, if we aren't seen to take action, if we don't do anything about that, they have the right to shut the stands down, and that's the absolute last thing we want. And quite frankly, we'd want everything that's safe and generates atmosphere to continue, but it is a balancing act. It's not entirely in our hands. We have external bodies we're answerable to as well. Sorry, does that answer your question?
I know it's not the answer you want yet, but we'll get there. We are aware and we are listening.
Now, I'm disabled, and if I go in the disabled stand, if the people in the south stand up, you cannot see the goal, and I'll come to football to watch it, not to see them standing.
That's a very fair point, and that's why also you just simply can't stand in front of the people behind you, yeah?
I can't
So you've spoke about like making up for your mistakes, but I think you shirked it off earlier. Honda Mark against Doncaster. I think 25 minutes to kick off, you realised you weren't eligible. How then can you then go on and make the same mistake? I mean, it's not that you're making malicious mistakes, it's you're making incredibly inept mistakes that are so easily avoidable. I mean, how can a football club employ a sponsorship that doesn't realise that it's a Ponzi scam or whatever you call it? How does a club not realise that there's homophobia behind it? There's so many little mistakes that you're making that are just so avoidable. Again, with Fanatics, I think other clubs have had issues. Did you not look into if they're actually a reliable brand to use rather than it looks cool or whatever?
So I can guarantee you we didn't sign up with Fanatics because it looks cool. But I'll get to that one first. I'll go in chronological order. So the first thing you said was around the FA Cup mistake. Absolutely. I do want to remind you, look, the board don't look at the team sheets before every game, etc. So there's people in place who do that, and there's people whose jobs are to make sure that doesn't happen. There were processes in place. They didn't work, and we've learned from that. So at that point, it goes up the board level, and we talk to people, we make sure this process is in place. But Julian and I are not sitting there before the game looking at the team sheet, making sure players are eligible. There's always people at the club doing that. And I agree with you. It should not have happened twice, and hopefully, like I said, it won't happen again. Absolutely. But look, no, the buck stops with us at the end of the day. I agree with you there. Mistakes will be made. People are human. Processes need to be put in to make sure it doesn't happen. But at the end of the day, they will happen. We just need to minimize the number of times it happens. The second one was Hex, was there? Yeah, so Hex, like I said earlier, we signed up with them, but within 72 hours we cancelled that. And in those 72 hours, we needed to make sure that we had legal advice. We needed to make sure that we were talking to Hex and saying, we're ending your sponsorship for this reason. This is the advice we've gotten. This is why we can do it. I think that was pretty much the quickest turnaround we could have done to cancel it. Yes, we should never have signed up with them in the first place. But again, if you're focusing on one sponsorship that went wrong in the last 1.5 years, or a handful of other things, look at clubs up and down the country, look at organizations up and down the country. This sort of stuff happens all the time at other organizations. Not saying that we shouldn't try to be better, but look at all the other good. I know online there's this negative swirl to focus on the same 3 or 4 issues over the last 1.5 years that have gone wrong, but there's a lot that's gone right. Let's try and focus on that and move on from this. And then Fanatics, the third thing, Julian, you can probably talk more about this, but some of the largest football clubs in the world work with Fanatics. It's not like some fly-by-night outfit that we decided to sign up for because it was cheaper, because it was cool or whatever. I think Barcelona work with them, United probably work with them. There's a lot of large clubs that do work with them. They're large organizational. But again, due to multiple factors between Puma, between Fanatics, between logistical shipping issues, this season's not what we expected from them. And the customer service hasn't been good enough. So again, we go away, we've taken that feedback to them, and then you can probably speak a lot more. Julia and John have had dozens and dozens of conversations with Fanatics to try and improve this going forward.
And for the other answer, right? Basically, things happening at the club level, they can't happen anymore. I mean, a lot, and it, yeah. So just think about it from our end, okay? From our end, that it literally, we have to put money into the club. When mistakes cost us money, Hex cost us money. The FA Cup costs us money. Your being upset with Fanatics costs us money, right? So if you're asking us what we're going to do differently, we're going to act faster. We cannot continue to run. We can't run a sustainable business with mistakes that keep happening like this.
No, you're completely right. Like I've said this multiple times, over the last 18 months, we've put £10 million into the club out of our own pockets. Every single mistake that cost the club money means we have to put in more. Sorry? No, absolutely. Absolutely. So we have the same incentive as you. We don't want this mistake to happen. None of us want this to happen. None of us want the club to lose revenue because that's less money that the club have. There's less money we can spend on transfers and players and everything that really matters. So we're all on the same side here.
Just want to make sure, obviously, we want every single question to be answered. We want everybody to be heard. But just to avoid that sort of shouting match so we can get the questions answered, I totally understand the passion and everything, absolutely. But please just raise your hand and we will definitely try to get the microphone over to you. Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Going back to FA Cup, this is to Collins. Do you pick side and why didn't you know?
I think as our chairman has said, listen, we all have to take responsibility. We all have to look at why did it happen, and I'm just not in the situation where I'm going to throw anyone under the bus. I think mistakes are made. This one's a particularly expensive one and a particularly disappointing one, just from a fan's perspective. I'm sure you'll understand as the manager, I've got 1,000,001 things to do. Knowing who isn't eligible is a pretty big one. I think there's people there to help me with that. And in this case, the process didn't work, and we got punished for it. And no one got punished for it more than the fans, but also the players, also the club. We all missed out. A big part of me coming here was the opportunity to play in, as I say, the cup competition. So again, we'll all need to be better for it. Yep, totally agree. Again, we've got processes in place that didn't quite work in this instance. Again, we've got people that have got certain roles and responsibilities. In this instance, it fell through the cracks, and as I said, we've all been punished for it.
Hello. Yeah. My question is: the new director of football, who will he or she report to in the football club? And how accountable will they be for their performance based on the job spec? Because one of the things that comes through tonight is mistakes by individuals have cost us a lot. And I hear the board say, yes, we have made mistakes, but these are individual mistakes by people who are and should be accountable for their job. And I'm a bit concerned with the new director of football role, how accountable he will be, or she, for that job spec.
So in terms of accountability, the director of football would report directly into the board. And their accountability, like I said, will be everything football related in terms of contracts. It transfers in, transfers out, renegotiation of contracts. They will be judging their results there, and they will be judging how they interact with Neill and sort of everything football related. So it's a wide spectrum. There's a wide remit in terms of what the job description entails. And they will be judged based on the football side of things completely.
Sorry, Megan. Julian, I just want to say from earlier, the amount of dedication that I think you two have got to be travelling the miles that you do is admirable. That's first of all. I didn't mean no disrespect about the American thing. However, I'm like a dog with a bone, and Fanatics, who owns them? Where are the base Fanatics?
Multiple. Well, they're American owner with multiple offices globally.
Where's the sponsorship from US Mobile?
America.
So, two people there, like two firms, both American, Stars, Eagle, but we want it to come back to Barnsley.
So why doesn't someone from Barnsley? Here's my thing then. Here's my throwback back at you. Those companies and US Mobile, being a US company, see the incredible value and opportunity for this football club. I wish sometimes you guys would see that and be a little bit more positive around the incredible club that is here. And the incredible, like, we come here. This is an incredible town, fantastic fans. You have a coach that 24/7 it's working on ways to make our team better, to get the results we want. Callum's sitting here, up and down the country. I wouldn't know what is going on in the club without you, Callum Cooper, and I follow. Like, you know, to say that the club is become American is not happening. It's more that sometimes people from the outside see the value of what you have here, and maybe you don't see it all the time. And I think it's an incredible club, incredible players, incredible group of staff. The fact that we're standing here getting punched in the face because, yes, we made those mistakes. You know, if you go to anyone's job, sometimes people have a bad day, they make a mistake, fine. You know, the hard thing when you're in a football club is those mistakes are so public-facing and have massive repercussions. So I'm just going to say the club is not becoming American.
Yet.
No,
It's
the
just-
club
it's
is
just
not becoming
Jean-
American.
Jean said, and it sticks with me, that she wanted it to stick, and obviously the relationship with Patrick, and the club, she wants it to be more about Barnsley and the Barnsley people. Nobody's really said that they like the shirts. Nobody's really said the sponsors. Nobody really said they like Fanatics. But you say you're listening to the fans. So is there a view to next year, this possibly coming back to someone even in the UK, before we get into a Manchester United American incident, and before you know it being taken over and the stars and stripes flying from every corner flag?
I know she won't like this, but Jean is sitting right behind you if she wants to comment on any of this. And I think she's the most Barnsley person on the board, right? Again, talking about the club being American top down, the board composed of 6 people, 3 of them are lifelong Barnsley fans from Barnsley, Jean, Rob, Zook and James. So everything at the club is Barnsley related.
Also, I'm Australian.
No, honestly, quite frankly, when some things get repeated online, they take on a life of their own. There's nothing American about this club. It's a Barnsley football club, and it's going to remain that.
If someone came in and gave us, $5 million for the front of shirt, and they, we're in business. This is a business. So, we just want to get back to the championship. We want to win. We want to have the best stadium we can. We want to have better fan experiences. We want the same things as you. It's just going to take us a little bit to get there, but we are going to get there, and we're very confident that we are. I want to sign Liam Roberts as well. It's not my decision.
You're talking about a director of football coming in, signing players, selling players. Why do we need a director of football? We've got a manager there that can do that job. Let him pick the players, let him buy the players, let him sell the players. That's his job.
Do you want to take this or I can? So Barnsley have, for the last decade, the entire ethos of the club is very data-driven. The way football is right now, we need to eke out any sort of edge we can because we're competing against people who are willing to burn unlimited amounts of money. The data system we have, if you look back at the transfers out we've had, people complain about selling too many players. Why are we selling players? Because people want our players, because we've recruited well historically over the last decade. All the way down from Alfie Mawson, Ethan Pinnock, down to the sales we've made this summer. Yeah, we're doing very well in the recruitment front. And the ethos of the club is to use data. So obviously Neill has input into the types of player we want. We're not going to, if Neill asks for centre-back, we're not going out and recruiting number 10. We're going to give him the type of player he wants. But in terms of the recruitment, the data team looks at it, and that's how we identify players who fit the Barnsley mould and who we believe are undervalued, so we can buy them. They can perform for us at a price that would have been 5x if we bought some other player. And that's how we have to run the club. There's no other way sustainably to run this club. Neill, do you want to comment in terms of recruitment or anything?
I think you've covered it.
Question to Neill, please. Have we got any update on Roberts? Obviously, I think Seny Diang's been called up to, is it African Nations for Middlesbrough? So when he's eventually fit again, will he be coming back to us? And also with Ben Killips, do you work on his punching, when he's put under pressure? Because a lot of times when he punches out, I noticed the last game he were getting distance on his punches, but in previous games he's sent to punch it out to an opposition player.
In terms of Robbo, he's obviously had a surgery on his hand and it's progressing very well. We expect him to be back out training with the team in any day now. And then it's just a case of once he's fit, then he comes back into contention. It's quite clear he's been fantastic for us this season. Big reason for that has been his commitment to being here, which is a huge thing, obviously, to me as the manager. Want players that are committed to being here to try and bring success to the club, and that's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons he's been he's been very successful. In regards to January, like with every loan, there's a possibility that he can get recalled. So we'll just need to address that as and when it comes. But between now and that moment in time, he's a Barnsley player, and we expect to see him back in the squad. And in regards to Ben, Tom Fodry, our goalkeeping coach, is, you know, when you come into a job and you inherit certain staff, it's a great opportunity to find new people, work with new people, and Tom's been fantastic. I think his record in his time here with the goalkeeping position's been very, very good, and I think he's done a lot of great work with Ben. And again, Ben's playing for the biggest club in his career, and I think he's done very well in the circumstances, because when you're replacing a player like Liam, who's a fantastic start to the season and a fan's favourite, it can be difficult. So Tom and him have been working together, as have all the staff, with all the players, trying to make them better.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's going to be a longer term return to play. Yeah, it's a serious injury, and he's working extremely hard as well with our sports science staff and medical staff. So hope to have him back in the new year.
So we're around about that sort of 50-minute mark for the first half. So we're going to take one more question, and then we'll take the opportunity to have a break, refreshments, and sort of a break. So we'll try and go to someone that's not had an opportunity yet. Yeah.
Right, Neil, just going on from what you've just said, I think commitment's a really important word that you've used, so I'll link to it in terms of effort. So how would you judge your team's commitment and effort over the last few weeks?
Sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Sorry, it's Adrian.
Adrian, you've obviously been a Barnsley fan a long time. How do you judge the team's effort and commitment as a fan?
That's another example where the sort of panels referred the question back to the audience, really. I mean, it's a question that I asked you, really, rather than you asking me. But I would say my judgment would be it's pretty mixed. I think there are some members of the team that put a lot of effort and commitment in, and I think that some of the others are pinching a living, personally.
Sorry, Adrian, I didn't mean to ask you how you think our players' commitment's been. I just wanted to know, as a fan, over the years, how you particularly had judged, like, so
I have been watching Barnsley for probably 56 years. I can't remember going back to the age of 4, that level of commitment. But there are many fans here who've been following Barnsley for many, many years. And there are teams that you could refer to that they've got maybe limited ability, but massive amounts of commitment. And it's getting a balance, isn't it? You need a balance between talent and effort and commitment. But I just think currently it seems a bit flat, and I think some team members aren't really putting the required amount of effort or commitment, personally.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because I was just talking beforehand. Funny enough, it was about Sheffield United, and there was a lot of questions at the weekend, regarding the players' commitment after losing 5-0 to Burnley. And I said it's interesting because, again, having been a player, there's times when you're just not good enough on the day, or you're maybe just not good enough in a period, and that can come across as lack of enthusiasm, lack of energy, lack of intensity. And I understand that as a fan. The one thing that you just expect all the time is 100% heart on the sleeve. Again, one of the easiest ways to show that is winning tackles, winning duels, battling for every ball. And I would say, I think the players by and large have done that. I would say the biggest disappointment for me was the Derby game. In reflection, watching that back, I don't think enough of them turned up and gave those basics. But what I would say is I don't think that's out of, at times, lack of commitment. Again, as I said, as a player who I think made up for maybe any shortcomings by giving my best, there's still days where it just doesn't quite come across. So our aim, and my job particularly, is to give you a team that reflects that. That's why I refer to someone like Luke O'Connell, because I think the energy, intensity that he brings is pretty visible for you guys to see. Now, not every player can necessarily do what Luca can do, and they've got to show what you guys want to see in a different way. So we're working hard, ever so hard to do that. But I would just say that sometimes when we're maybe not giving you the performances that you want, not necessarily always put it down to the effort and energy. I understand that, and sometimes that might be the case. I'm certainly not going to highlight anyone here tonight that might or might not. But I do think we've got a lot of committed players, and a big part of my job is finding out the most committed and ones the most talented and getting most of them onto the pitch. And I think when we've done that, we've seen much more of what we want to see. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. That concludes the first half then of tonight's Fan Forum. We'll give these three a little bit of a break, and we'll have sort of 5-10 minutes or so to get refreshments, toilet breaks, all that, and then we'll get cracking once again. Thank you, guys. Right then, ladies and gentlemen, so we'll get started then with this second half. Now that we've had a little bit of a break, we'll get through more of your questions. I will open it to the floor very, very shortly. Sorry about that. I know, yeah, sorry. We will get to you, I promise you. But I'm just eager to get through sort of some of the online questions that came in before. Some fans, obviously, unfortunately, not able to make it here tonight. So we just want to get through those as well to make sure everybody is heard. So these are some of the most frequently asked. Now, I've been ticking them off as we've been going through, so I've actually covered some of them, but we'll go through the ones that we've missed. So this is one from online, and it's regarding the EFL charges against Barnsley. And it says, when are the club likely to find out the results of the EFL charges that were brought against them after multiple breaches of EFL regulations back in July of this year?
So it's actually good timing because we've just got a rough timeline around when things will be heard and then a result will be out. It's likely to be sometime towards the end of April or early May. That's the timeline we have from the legal team. If that changes, hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later, but that's what we have right now.
Perfect, thank you. And we touched on the January transfer window slightly in the first half, but not in too much detail. There's another one here saying, what preparations have been made for the January transfer window so far?
The first, and this was touched upon by a couple of people, is the loan players. Some of the loan players might go back, so we're preparing to make sure that we've got backups in each of those positions. And then beyond that, obviously strengthening in some positions where we think we need more bodies and we need more quality. So we've got the list of names already. We're already talking to clubs and players. That being said, January is notoriously difficult, even more so than the summer. So we don't know what we're actually going to end up pulling off there. But the preparations are in place. And I think the most important thing, quite frankly, will be keeping the vast majority of our squad, especially the ones who are going to get offers, the ones who are out of contract and clubs think they can come in with a cheeky bid and try and get that player to join. We're going to be firm around that. There's no guarantee, and I've learned from the Liam Kitching thing, there's no guarantee that any player will stay. But the intention is to keep all our players here, unless, of course, it's out of our hands, like a release clause, for example.
And this might be one more for Julianne. So as we approach the halfway point of the season, how do you feel that the first season of the BFC women being in operation has gone?
Phew, I thought that was going to be another Fanatics question. And I should be doing PR for Fanatics. You know what? Has anyone come to watch the girls' games? I really encourage you. Yes, I really encourage you. Thank you to do that. We are 6th on the ladder right now. We every game we're getting better. We have a great group of girls. We've got, the great thing about the women's league is that you can keep adding players during the season. So we're continuing to add some great players, and we are aggressively trying to win that league so that we can go up to the next level. That's it. I mean, you should come watch us. There's a great group, and they would really love your support.
And there's one more surrounding the women's team as well. And what is the long-term goal and vision for the Barnsley FC women?
I spoke with Jess today, who's our coach of the women's team. Our long-term goal is to, right now, that she would be sitting right here, and that we would always have representation for the women's side. But our goal for the women's team is to get up the tiers, to have professional players, and to grow the Barnsley banner across women's, men's, and the academy.
Fantastic. Thank you, Julianne. So that's covered the ones that we've got down on the list. As I said, plenty of them in the first half were sort of ticked off and mentioned and covered. So we will open it back up to the floor. I know I sort of interrupted you as you had your hand up first. So if you want to sort of take the first one, that'd be fantastic. I'll just obviously reiterate in terms of when people are asking questions, try and stay as quiet as possible. The same for answering. We want to just get through as many as possible. Thank you, guys.
So my question is about the transfers, the contracts that is expiring at the end of the year. Sorry, I had a quick look through transfer market. I'd be lying if I said I did it downstairs. I did it a bit earlier to this meeting, but from what I can see, there's maybe 3 or 4 key players leaving in the summer. So my question to Neerav and Julie, and Neil actually, what are we going to do to replace those players? And also that also blends into the approach that we took earlier on in the season. Obviously, we've got McAtee. Sorry, I completely forgot his first name. We've got McAtee on his on loan at start of the season. We've got Roberts on loan, McCart on loan. I'm not saying it's impossible, but do you think that this is leading into a quite difficult situation, having to make sure that these players sign a new contract at the end of the season and also trying to sign these loan players?
So in terms of the loan players, just to touch on January, the contracts are different for each player. So some players need both clubs to agree to terminate the loan. Some, the parent club can unilaterally do it. So not all those players will be going back, even in the worst case scenario. In terms of signing players, yes, obviously there's 4 first-team players out of contract at the end of this season. We've opened discussions with a couple of them around a new contract, and ideally we extend them. If not, that's what happens in football. We'll find replacements for them. But the work to replace them isn't necessarily only going to happen in January. Some of the replacements might come in the summer as well. But we're absolutely well aware of which players are out of contract, and we know where we need to strengthen. Neil, do you want anything?
No, I think in regards to the loan players, we'll be working hard to keep them. I think they're very committed. As regards to loan players, I don't think we could have 3 or 4 more committed players on Dodge and included with the 3 guys that you mentioned, which is very, very important because the loan market can be difficult. So those guys have been exceptional. I love it.
This time last year, I was, I'm not involved in this player side. I keep completely out of it, and I'm a fan. So this time last year, I was totally panicked. It's like, this person's going, but you haven't got a contract with this one. This one's contract expiring, blah, 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 blah. And I think that you guys did an incredible job in the January transfer window last year. I think we got some incredible players that took us to Wembley. So I have a lot of faith in you guys and James. I know there's a big recruiting meeting tomorrow that they'll get us across the line. But just trust me, they are very aware and with you on all the dates.
If you think the pressure we feel from fans around recruitment is a lot, the pressure from Julianne's 10 times more than that. Trust me. Yeah, she's always on it.
I'm just wondering if... Well, I've not seen Khalid. I'm guessing he's had to shoot off. There you are. I don't know, Neerav, if they whispered in your ear about this big news? Or is he taking it with his flatbreads?
The flatbreads were small news. This is bigger than them, just slightly. But what I can say about the big news is it doesn't concern only the football club, and so it's not entirely in our hands. There is another party involved, and we're talking that party, but the timeline isn't something that we can conclusively say is tomorrow, next week, next month, because it doesn't rest only with us. I'll leave it there for now, but hopefully it's going to be here sooner rather than later. The last fans forum I told you it's hopefully going to be in the next couple of months. It hasn't happened yet.
He hasn't told you, has he?
Yeah.
We're all under an NDA. We can't speak.
Neil, will you make Luke O'Connell captain?
No, Jordan Williams is our captain, and Jordan Williams has been an exceptional captain in my time in charge. Coming in pre-season was difficult because you've obviously lost, a manager after a successful season, a relatively successful season. A lot of interest around, a lot of players. You talk about commitment. the one player that I could rely on to be 100% committed every day was Jordan. Due to the makeup of the squad, we've asked him to play in a slightly different position. He's brought some fantastic qualities to that role. He's gone through, at times, learning process as well. But when I hear you guys speak and think about the passion that you've got for the club, you know, Jordan's got that. And if you were in at the club every day, you would see that. They were very fortunate that we've also got someone like Luca Connell, who from time to time I'm sure will wear the armband if Jordan's not in the field. And we need as many of those players as we possibly can. So I understand your point. Luca Connell will be a captain and will be a future captain. But right now I'm very happy with Jordan Williams in his role as captain. And if you guys see him on a day-to-day basis, you'd be proud of him as well.
I just want to add to that. Today, you know, I came in this morning and I was having lunch in the canteen and I saw Jordan and Nikki Cadden, and I just went up to Jordan and I said, Jordan, I'm so sorry with what happened about the FA Cup, because, you know, of course, you know, that happened, but, you know, for the players, you know, they play in FA Cup games. I mean, it's the FA Cup, you know, and I said, Jordan, I'm so sorry that happened. And he looked at me and he just said, you know, we all make mistakes. He said, don't worry about it. We'll go again. And he made me feel better. And that was a real captain who did that. So I just wanted to say that.
Regarding transfers, will Neill have a say on it? Or we player that we want? Or is it going to be somebody who can run 100 metres in 9.2 seconds or something? Because that's what we've got with some players.
I think, so the recruitment and the data analysis is a little bit more it's a little bit more nuanced than that. But so in terms of the process, it's fairly simple. Neill identifies areas in the squad where he thinks we're weak. We go out and look for that kind of player. So say he wants a centre-back. Recruitment team has that as a brief. They look at centre-backs. They filter it down to a handful. And then effectively we start talking to all of them, and the ones who are affordable and fit in the Barnsley budget, the ones who show up highly on the data, and the ones, crucially the third one, the ones who really want to come to Barnsley, those are the ones we try and get eventually. So Neill has input in the initial part of the process, but eventually we do rely on data because that is just the ethos of the club, like I said.
At the moment we play 3 at back, 2 wing backs. And our squad isn't balanced enough to change that. We've got no wingers for a start to get round back and get the ball in. The two.
Well, do you think?
I won't go into the individual players.
Yeah, no, but at this point we've got a fairly large squad in general. If we had wingers, or we had multiple wingers filling the squad as well, eventually there's people who don't make the 18-man squad. Eventually we're paying wages for players who are not going to make it onto the pitch ever in the season. So it is a balancing act. It's lovely to have the flexibility to change systems all the time. It's lovely to have players you can bring off the bench who can change the game all the time. The reality in League One is you can't always have those players, but I do think we've got a very deep bench this season.
You've got to have a plan B. You can't carry on playing 3 at back and 2 wing back if it's not working. You've got to be able to change your system.
I think 100% agree with your point in terms of we need to be adaptable, we need to be flexible. Again, we're 18 league games into a season where we've really been trying to build on some of the work that was done last year, you know, in a system that the players know and had relative success with some different, obviously from some different pieces in there. The aim is to be very flexible, to be able to change, like you said, whether it's a back 4, a back 3, the principles should stay the same, but the systems can change. But also recognise that there has been a high turnover of managers in the past few years. And it takes a little bit of stability sometimes to bring that into the squad as well. And that's what we're working hard and why we're having the meetings to do that. So I totally agree with your point. We do want to have balance. That's where I come back to someone again like Jordan Williams. He's worth his weight in gold because he can play right centre back, he can play right back, he can play right wing back. Herbie Kane's another one, very flexible, can play anywhere in the midfield. So we could maybe just do a couple more that can do that, but we're working towards that. You know, again, we'll all have our opinions, all right? We'll all have our opinions. We're still... Yep, well, again, I think Barry Cotter's got 3 goals this season. Again, Barry Cotter's had some fantastic moments, but also as a younger player that's still got a lot to improve, and he has done that in my time. We've got Corey O'Keefe and we've got Jordan, and all 3 of them will feature at right wing back. But equally, again, a big part of my job, as I've mentioned, is we lost top level back 3 last year. We had Casper Lapata break his collarbone. So we're trying to get the best with what we've got, and right now I think that means Jordan Williams at times is playing right over 3. But again, that's why me and the recruitment team, we have discussions constantly over how we can get better. I should say as well that pre-season was very difficult coming in. There was lots of issues that we had to deal with. The start of the season wasn't exactly what we'd hoped, but I look at the last 14 games where I think we had a much more settled squad. So we brought in Jamie McCart, we brought in John McAtee, Sam Cosgrove, although he's played a smaller part than we'd like to this point because of a couple of injuries. The last 14 games, we've won 8, drew 3, lost 3. A couple of those draws should quite easily have been wins, and the three losses all coincided with losing a penalty early in the game. So that's promotion form. So if we can continue to get the best out of these guys, and that's what we're trying to do, and I think the team is progressing. But again, there's the occasional step backwards. We can get there, and people like Jordan, Barry, they're all open to getting better. And the more players we've got like that, the better we'll be.
Hi there. Not every Barnsley fan actually lives close to Barnsley, and I've just moved up from London, and some of the other London tags have great concerns about the number of Saturday games that appear to be being moved. Now, I know there's international call-ups, that's not our fault, but the Horsham game was moved, and then later on the Carlisle game, and I appreciate we had, was it 4 call-ups? But my friends, they've booked their train tickets 2 months in advance. Those games get rescheduled. They lose their money on the trains. They don't get to come to the match because they can't make midweek games. And as a season ticket holder living in London, you only see 15, 16 home games anyway. So if games have to be called off, they must be done with 2 months' notice, and we should stop kowtowing to what South Yorkshire Police request. We always change whenever they ask something.
So in terms of the international games, it's some of them are out of our hands. For example, when we were playing some other clubs, they had 3 call-ups. They have the right to call the game off, and that can't happen 2 months in advance because the squads are only announced a couple of weeks in advance. So unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that. And the Carlisle fixture, actually, obviously we had to call it off. We tried to rearrange that for the weekend, last weekend, when we didn't have an FA Cup game, unfortunately. So we are trying if we can rearrange fixtures. Carlisle said no, and we didn't have a say in that eventually. In terms of the FA Cup game, yes, we don't want to kowtow to South Yorkshire Police. I fully get you, and we need to sort of at some point say we can't move these games around, this is silly. But it's a balancing act because obviously also we need South Yorkshire Police. We need a symbiotic relationship with them because we do need policemen at games. We don't have a choice. And also the safety certificate depends on the police and the safety advisory group giving us a safety certificate. So it's not like we can just stand up and say we're going to ignore everything you say. That being said, I think we do need to push back more in certain circumstances. It's a fair point, and it's actually something we've discussed, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's something we've absolutely discussed, and I think the Horsham game also, could we have pushed more? Yes. Was the decision taken not to push? Because, I mean, there's a certain amount of credit you have, and in the future when they ask us to move games, we're going to go and say, look, you forced us to move the Horsham game, we did that. This time we don't want to do it. So it's a give and take, but we will need to push back further in certain circumstances.
Also, we're very conscious of what you're saying. We want the Saturday games as well. I mean, it's better, obviously, for the players to not play Saturday. You know, coming up, I think in January, it's like Tuesday, Saturday, that's not great for us from a player perspective because we don't get any recovery. But we are, as a board, really one of our things is that we don't want to be little old Barnsley, right? That you can just push us around and just move our dates and, they won't care and give us bad referees. And, we are very much, advocating for the club as much as possible. And, whilst without being, crazy about it, but we've definitely are pushing forward on those dates. I know Neerav, when those dates moved, Neerav was the first person to say, why are we changing these dates? So we get it.
And on the flip side, next season when we win the championship, there won't be any games during the international breaks anyway. Yeah. They'll know that in advance.
We're going to get there.
We'll get there. If we get Roberts back in goal, we'll be there.
Just a question for Neill mainly. We've touched on the transfers a couple of times. We've got a policy in that we're not signing players over 25-year-old, which has been in for a few years. What does Neill think about signing a couple of experienced players to try to help us get out of this league?
I think that might have been a previous policy, but I don't think the club have upheld that the last couple of years, if I'm right, because I think there's been 2 or 3 experienced players signed, like Norwood, Cole's obviously 28, so I think that's something that they would consider if we felt it was right, maybe in the short to medium term. So to be fair to the recruitment team and the board, certainly over the past couple of years that's not been the case. But we do have a very young side. But that's again part of the policy, but it doesn't exclude senior experienced players.
So, multiple answers to that actually. So, absolutely, there's never been a policy of only 25 and under. I think in general, a lot of the players we look at are 25 and under just because of how Barnsley operate as a club. We want to buy players who are undervalued and we believe can do better for us than what we'd have to pay full value for, because obviously Barnsley as a club are not a championship club right now. That being said, I completely agree with you. So if you look at, James Norwood's one example. I think the best example of this was Michael Solbauer back in the day. The impact he had as an experienced player. So I fully understand why we should get experienced players in. For me, I'm not looking at their age. I'm looking at a number of games played, but 2, ability. I think more than experience, raw ability is far more important. If they're good enough, if they're young enough, they're good enough, they play. If they're old enough, they're good enough, they play. It doesn't matter how old they are. So I don't think there's any sort of active policy like that. I know for a fact there isn't. And if we believe that there's a good experienced player who would fit into the Barnsley system, who's hungry, who wants to come here, there's no limit, there's no sort of diktat that we won't get him at all.
Yeah, hi. It probably links with that last question. Do you think we're doing enough to bring the academy players through? Because I think we've got some great young players in the academy, and these loans sort of get in the way. And I know you've got a tension between current performance and developing young players, but I think we've got some great young players that I'd like to see coming through to a greater extent.
Totally agree. I think over the years, Barnsley have been renowned for being able to produce some fantastic young players. I think you'll have seen this season there's been great opportunities in various games where we've seen some of those young players. Fabio Giallo, Vamal, Yoganathan, we've got Theo Chapman. So we've had players that have had their debuts. The big challenge right now, and obviously Bobby continuing in the director of football role, we're continuing to look at how we progress that process. You know, the chairman mentioned we've got quite a big squad right now, and at times that blocks some of the pathways. So a big part, again, is trying to trim that to make sure if there's someone's good enough, there's a pathway into the team. But the loan market is very, very difficult. To try and find a player that we think needs that experience to go out to be ready to play for Barnsley is very difficult, and something that we're continuing to try and improve, because going down to the conference or even League Two is not necessarily similar to playing here, and maybe necessarily the style that we want to play. I think that's just part of, again, trying to have stability and consistency and find better pathways to do that. I think the Bradford game in the Football League is a good example of why we want them to be exposed to those experiences, so that we don't have to necessarily go through too much pain, because I've got to still match the expectations of this club in terms of trying to get up a level and at the same time get young players into the team. So it's a fine balance, and we're working hard to try and do it. And I think this year there has been enough signs that we've given those opportunities to young players, but we want them to come in and be able to flourish and have, you know, the fans behind them. I think Aidan Marsh, as I say, is another example of someone that's shown that he's capable, but to be the 20-goal striker that we need, he probably needs that good loan, and just finding clubs that can give him that opportunity is harder than you'd think.
Hello. Apologies if you already heard this question already. Been that many already. My question is, going back to the director of football role, why are you looking for one now, rather when you've already said you've been here, 18 months? Why wasn't that something that you were looking at when you first came in, or at the end of last season just gone? Why is it now's the perfect opportunity? Oh, we need a director of football. Because that announcement came within, 24 hours of the FA Cup announcement of that you've been kicked out for that. So it seemed a bit reactionary, like, oh, we made this administrative error, now we need somebody who's in charge of football operations.
So there was absolutely no link between the two. In fact, talking about director of football, the entire discussions have been going on for months. So it's not like we woke up the next morning after the FA Cup and said, oh, we're putting out a job advert and hiring someone in a reasonably high salary just because we got knocked out of the FA Cup. It's been going on for months. Khalid, in his role, to be fair, had been doing a lot of the director of football stuff anyway, and this has been consistent across CEOs. So Gauthier, Dane, all of them focused more on the sporting side anyway. But we realized that a lot of the other side was being neglected, to the point where we decided we need to split the two up. And that was the reasoning behind it. We talked to a lot of other clubs, we've talked to other people in the industry, and I think most clubs are moving towards that. Just because the role is too large for one person, there's only so much time in the day, and also the skill set is very varied across the two roles. So, no, the discussions have been going on for months, and it took time, in fact, to refine exactly what we wanted out of the role, find the right recruitment company, and then go live with the adverts. So it wasn't a reaction to the FA Cup. In fact, it couldn't have been done in 24 hours.
I know it's been touched on, but I don't think it was clearly answered. In terms of stewards and fans, I think you can go to any team in the 92 and stand up and you wouldn't get hassled by stewards. Why is it just this club that enforces that rule so heavily on fans that are just coming to watch a football game and not causing problems?
We're having that's a conversation that we will be having in our board meeting tomorrow. Again, we, I don't know why Barnsley always gets singled out, right? From for a lot of these things, like your fans are doing this, your fans are doing that. We'll get fined for something that another club did and didn't even get fined for. So we are addressing that. One thing is, maybe we would like our stewards to maybe be a little bit more friendly. Some of them take their job very seriously. And that's something that we need to address with the safe standing. We can't change it immediately, but we are totally aware and on it. And obviously the first thing is, let's have our stewards be a little bit more polite, but still effective.
Just to add to that, though, I can guarantee you that across the 92 clubs, this happens at every club because there's pressure from the authorities in every single club. It's not just Barnsley. Obviously, we feel like Barnsley get the raw end of the stick, but every single club gets this because we're answerable to certain authorities. That being said, Julian's completely right. The stewards can be friendlier. There is a middle line. There's sort of middle ground there where you can enforce the rules without being too draconian about it, and we'll talk about it and see if we can improve that, yeah? Yeah. Yeah. So. Yeah. Yeah, no, so I can guarantee you it's being enforced. It's largely enforced in the home stands because even the EFL admit it's much harder to police the away fans because obviously you don't have records of who's doing what, etc. That being said, obviously as Barnsley fans, we focus on what's happening at Barnsley and we see what's happening and we're being singled out. I can guarantee you there's Sheffield Wednesday fans, Sheffield United fans, take any club across up and down the country who are facing the same things because it's the EFL, the SGSA, all of them are mandating that fans shouldn't stand up. And also the counterpoint to that, as this lady said, is disabled supporters, for example. If you can't see what's going on in front of you because people are standing up, that's not really fair either. So there has to be a balance.
And the problem is home stewards, by the way.
Yeah, we got that.
I'll just take a couple more. Sorry to interrupt. Obviously, we've got a few more here from online as well that I want to make sure that we do cover. And we've obviously had a lot of questions, a lot of similar questions. And in terms of the match day experience that we've got a couple here for, this one comes from online as well that we're sort of keen to cover. This one says, what steps are taking place behind the scenes to enhance the matchday experience? Can any of these developments be shared publicly at this point?
That's actually what I was going to ask, to be fair. So,
I think I can share them. We're working on... can I share, Match John? Am I allowed to? Okay. So, there is currently... we're researching a stage being built down in between the Ponty and all the boxes, so just here. We realize that, our focus has to be, we have to make it fun to be here. And I see all these comments like Oakwell is a tomb and wow, I went to Oakwell, it was horrible. So we realize that if we can create a better fan experience, that a match day will be more fun. So the plan is to involve more of the community in match day, more mascots, more music, perhaps some performances, maybe some competitions. John, am I missing anything out? Maybe some different food, a new fan zone that we can't talk about yet, but is going to be amazing. And he's already telling me to stop talking. Yes, so Mr. Internet, who asked the match day experience, we are definitely working on that. We have ideas, but there won't be any match day experience if there's no fans. So, cheaper beer, free beer. I'm Australian, free beer. But we need fans to have a great match day experience. So, and what is the best match day experience? When we win. So. If we focus on winning, matchday experience gets better. We will focus on also building some physical things around the stadium and events that can bring us a better matchday experience for all generations.
And another one, you obviously mentioned the fan zone there, and I know it's been a little bit difficult, obviously, in sort of recent months for XYZ reasons. Another question here, collated from online, is: are there any plans to open the fan zone during winter?
Look. When we go to away games and we see their fan zone, the first thing I say is, wow, how come our fan zone sucks and this is so good? There are plans. Again, I can't talk about them, but there are 100% plans for a fan zone that is better, that you will love, and that will make coming to Oakwell a lot of fun. That's all I can say.
But And on that note, actually, I'd like to thank the Supporters Trust for all the work they do in the fan zone. They do an incredible amount of work behind the scenes, and I think the fan zone we have right now is partly due to them. Obviously, we want to improve things, have a more permanent structure, etc. But thank you for everything you guys do.
Any more questions from anybody? Yeah. Perfect, thank you.
Hiya. I just want to say a few things. Obviously, a lot of fans in general are hurt from, obviously, ever since Patrick's gone, obviously, there's been a lot of change. I mean, we're used to stability at this club. I mean, like, we've had, different things over years and stuff like that. But, so obviously a lot of fans I think they're struggling with, obviously, trying to get to grips with, like, believing in things that you're saying, because the change is so frequent, as in, like, these last few years, we've had a lot of managers and there's different reasons why, obviously, like, Michael Duff's ended up obviously leaving and his offers and stuff like that. And I think, obviously, just a lot of fans are still struggling with that, and that's why I think tonight, especially, there's a lot of things that are coming across probably quite in a certain way, but it's more passionate, clearly, obviously, because we're wanting to, we feel a certain way and we're wanting to kind of portray that. But I think the biggest thing at the minute is that we're all wanting to. I think we'll all agree we're all on the same ship. We're all wanting to win games. We're all wanting to have the best experience possible. Oh well, there's a lot of things I think are quite simple. For example, fan zone, people just want beer, food, a bit of music, maybe a player saying something. You don't have to be all special. It needs to be something that we've never been to one. We come every game to home games, but we never think to go to there because we just think, well, there's not really much going off there. There might be a band playing out black, but it's food. Can't really see food. Or when we're going to ground, then ground's absolute fortune, so we're not going to eat nothing in there. Quality's not very good, so, and queues are long. All them sort of things, which whatever it is. But I think that's one of the main things with things like that. The only thing I wanted to ask Neil is if you had say you had the perfect team, so as in like say all players are fit, you had say you could not sign anyone, that's a tough question, but as in like if you could if you had the players that you could have in your team, what would, it sounds weird to say, but what would your ethos be? Because I think what a lot of fans are struggling with at the minute, up to now, at this point in the season, is that we've won games and we've looked terrible in some games, and things like that. But I think we're thinking that we're struggling to understand how the team's meant to play, as in like, we lost all his defence, but as midfield, I know Connell's been out injured, but you try to keep the midfield the same, because as in like, Phillips and Kane were a big part of that midfield last season. Phillips were on fire at one point, Kane were on fire and stuff like that. So do we keep, for you personally, if you could have, if all players fit and everything like that, how would you want to set the team up and play? As in like, you've got your back three. Yeah, because all it is we see certain games where none of us seem to fully understand what's supposed to be happening. Like, they'll pass ball to one side, then they'll pass ball to the other side. Then Nicky Cadden's not really in a very good position to really get forward quick enough to then cross the ball in. Cross the ball in, there's nobody in box, so nobody's here to hit ball in, because we know Devante's not, his forte, he's not hitting ball. So you know what I mean? Like, where's that side of things?
I think ultimately, everyone wants to win. We all want to win a certain way, right? The way that we want to win is by scoring lots of goals, not conceding many goals, all the top teams pressing, getting after it, putting the other team under pressure, getting the ball back high when you've got it, playing exciting football. For me, that's playing quickly, being able to vary it, get players 1v1, you see getting the ball in the box. As I say, of course it takes time. It takes, sometimes you get a bit more of it, sometimes you get a bit less of it. We've been known for being a pressing team, at times you go to press and the teams will just kick it long. You've got to deal with that. So in the Football League and in League One, you've got to deal with a lot of different things. Ultimately, we want to bring all the things that you said. Sometimes you see a little bit more of one thing and a little bit less of another. 18 games in the league. I said about the first 4 or 5, we were firefighting in many aspects. I think since then there's been more consistency. So again, to answer your question, we want to give you all the things that you want, but it's just going to take a little bit of time, and we want to try and continue to win while we can do that. I understand at times you might feel that you don't see it. I think sometimes it can be like that as you're getting better, but hopefully over the coming months you will see it, and you will see some of the football that you want to see. Thank you.
And then just on like what you're saying about the fan zone, just wanting coffee and beer. Sorry, I know. Sorry, I won't bring that up to you. Remember I think what I'm hearing and what we can do is take away too, and that we have some very big plans coming, and they're taking a long time to happen. And maybe what we can do in the short term is some quick fixes, some quick changes, so that you can start to see where we're going. And I think we can do that, and we can do that relatively quickly. So thanks for that.
All it is you're saying like we've got some big plans. Don't have to be big plans.
No, I
don't
appreciate
really have
it.
to be. It just has to be. Accrington Stanley do it great where they've got a tent. You go in. They're selling cheap pies, cheap beer. There's a guy playing a
accordion.
Music and that. And that. Yeah, no, I've
Michael Duff's just been sacked, by the way. That's not funny, by the way. Just going back to match day experience, sorry, I think a big thing for me, and there's a kid here at side of me who'll totally agree, and I'm sure Neil will to a certain extent, but I were at Lincoln a couple of weeks ago, and they had a small, safe standing section. Obviously tucked away up in corner, but they really got the atmosphere going for home crowd, and it made a massive difference to them on pitch. I've absolutely no doubt it did. And I'm sure if we could implement something similar down here, just in between Ponty and West Stand, just that bit of slope there, it doesn't have to be big, but I think you've got a lad here stood at side, he'll have his shirt off in all weather. He'll be there dancing, bouncing about, he'll get crowd going, absolutely no problem. And for me, I think that 18 to 25-year-old generation that you've got coming down to ground at minute, they want to be bouncing. Yeah. That's what's going to keep them coming back. That's what's going to keep them interested. No, and I think that will have an impact on players on pitch as well. I'll be honest, last couple of games at Oakwell, atmosphere has been absolutely terrible. Yeah. And I think for me, that ties into that match day experience. It's all right having your burger bars and all your fan zones and all that sort of stuff, but what happens in stands for me is just as important as what goes off in any fan zone.
No, absolutely.
Like I said, Lincoln had it a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. I don't think it'll cost much, and it don't have to be big.
Yeah.
I'm just glad he thinks I'm between 18 and 25.
Can you come up here and give us a bouncing demonstration?
I think I know we've got a role to play in that as a team, and that's again going back to the previous question that we want to be able to do that. And I would say a big thing for me has been, I think our away form has been excellent, and a big part of that is when you're going towards 2,000 or 3,000 fans that have got behind us fantastically well. You know, we've seen what those days can be like. I think Exeter, obviously at Lincoln we didn't quite get it over the line, but when the second goal goes in, it's great scenes. So if we can get more of that here by our performances, that's what I'm here for, of course. Yep.
And it does, but when you go for Barnsley away games, if you listen to the noise the away fans make, it's incredible. So the Barnsley fans clearly come out and voice, they can sing, they can do this. We'd love to see more of this at home games, and I think safe standing is obviously one way to get there. Like I said earlier, we only have another 3 or 4 years left in the lease at Oakwell, so If that changes, obviously that's an investment the club can look into. At this point, obviously, it doesn't make any sense to invest hundreds and thousands of pounds into that if the lease is expiring in 3 or 4 years. But yeah, of course it's important. I mean, we recognize that the atmosphere at Oakwell feeds onto what the players do on the pitch. And that's one of the things, honestly, we have for the fans. Please just make as much noise as you can. We recognize that... We recognize, and we've discussed it, we've been through this, we're going to talk about this, we're going to talk to stewards and see how we can reach a middle ground. But this commitments we need to meet as well to the SGSA, the EFL, all of that. So, yeah, we've talked about this.
We hear you loud and clear.
So we are coming towards the very end of tonight's fan forum. Couple of minutes left. We're going to take one more question before we go to a final word from our 3 guests here tonight. Obviously, we had plenty of questions, covered so many different topics, and we had some great questions as well. So we'll have one more before we go to a final word.
I feel like pressure's on me now for the last question.
Oh no, it's you.
I'm sorry to drag out the point, but a little bit confused here. So when we mentioned about safe standing, what is the difference then between getting approval or whatever for safe standing when we don't have a long-term lease on the grounds, but yet making developments for the fan zone? So where does that difference lie, whether it's car park or stadium? And then the second one is that, look, if there's contracts sort of questions regarding fan zone outside, why is it such a big secret about what these master plans are? Are they so big and grand, or is it, something nice and cheap and cheerful, what we are asking for?
So in terms of the fan zone, it's exactly the same as safe standing. I don't think we're going to invest huge sums of money into fan zone unless we know that we're going to be at Oakwell for longer. Our intention is to be at Oakwell for the next however many decades. We've passed that era where there was threats being made about moving out of Barnsley, etc. That's not going to happen. But obviously the club don't own the ground, so we do have to negotiate and try and sort that out. In terms of grand plans, you'll see when they happen, I guess. I can't really say very much right now. But I don't want to promise too much because I've seen how the big news took a life of its own. So let's just keep it as is right now, and we'll see how things progress.
But just to follow up, it's not another question, but just to make it clear from a fan point of view, that if we are waiting 3 or 4 years for a new lease or whatever, just tell us that we can't do it for 3 or 4 years. People will accept that as long as we know.
This is what we're just alluding to what we were talking about before. There's a few things we can do now, and then there are some bigger things we can do later. So I think when we're going to have a chat tomorrow in our board meeting, and we're going to see what we can do now, and we will do our best to make those happen, and then the big news things will come later. Thanks.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending the fans forum here tonight. We've had some absolutely brilliant questions over about an hour and a half there that we've done. I'll just hand it over to each of our 3 guests here on our panel here tonight, just for a final word to summarise. So, Neil, I'll come to you first.
No, I just want to say thanks for coming and voicing your questions, but most importantly, showing the passion that you've got for the club. Ultimately, I'm in the job that I want to try and meet those expectations, and that's what we're working very hard to do. Ultimately, we're judged every Saturday, every time we play a game. In between that, working exceptionally hard, as I say, to bring success to you guys, and we'll continue to do that this season. All right, thanks very much.
Yeah, I don't think there's very much more to be said than what Neil said. Thank you guys for showing up. The fact that all of you all took 2 hours out of your Monday evening to come here shows how much you all care about the club. And if there's any one message I want us to take away from this, owners, players, first team staff, fans, everyone's on the same side. We want the same thing for the club. So let's go and do it. Let's get promoted.
What? Well, we're here. Okay, here's what I want to. Every day. I'm happy to communicate with you guys every day on social media if it's respectfully. That's all I'll say. If it's respectful, I'm happy to communicate on anything, and all of us are. But let's keep it professional. Okay, I just want to say my thing is that thank you, Neerav. You're an incredible chairman. And we love working with you.
It's a board effort. It's everything.
Jean, at the back there. We love you, Jean. Neill, thank you for everything that you do. It's not easy. I think it's not easy being a manager of a club, but it's not easy being a manager of Barnsley Football Club. And I also want to thank you guys for coming tonight and being so honest, because because here's the thing: you speak with your money when you come to the games, and we really appreciate you with your season tickets. We appreciate you coming. There's nothing more special to us than, well, to me, I'll speak for myself, by seeing the multi-generational fans, the kids all the way up. And for that, we're just so grateful. And as you know, we are custodians. You know, the club is 36 years old. We want it to be here for another 136 years. So that won't happen unless we're all together. So really thank you for everything that you do, and thank you, Neill and Neerav.
Just have one big final round of applause, please, guys, for tonight's panel, for answering all your questions, and for you guys answering here tonight as well in the Legends Suite. I believe the plan for the end was to have John Bird, who's the head of the fan engagement, to be sort of the back of the room if anybody's got any extra questions or feelings or thoughts, opinions, anything like that they want to ask that they've not had the chance to. You can do that at the back. But I just want to say a massive, massive thank you to everyone that's attended and asked questions and put their thoughts forward. As always, thank you for your loyal support. Hopefully see some of you at Blackpool tomorrow, Reading at the weekend as well. But yeah, thank you guys and have a safe journey home. Thank you.